So as governor of New Mexico, completely outside of the political system, I've always been pro-choice regarding everything, okay? Look, there is only a couple of voices being heard here, and it's Tweedledee and it's Tweedledum. Well, I think that when it comes to political campaign contributions, that candidates should be required to wear NASCAR-like jackets with patches on the jackets commensurate. So what's really needed is 100% transparency. I will tell you that regardless of whether or not Romney gets elected or Obama gets elected, three things are going to happen. We're going to find ourselves with a continued heightened police state in this country. We're going to find ourselves continuing to militarily intervene in the world, which has resulted in hundreds of millions of enemies to this country that wouldn't otherwise exist. There's a reason why we shouldn't be using drones. It's because we don't just take out the target, we take out a lot of innocent civilians in these countries where these drones attack.
All right.
And then lastly, we are going to find ourselves in a continued state of unsustainable spending and borrowing to the point that we are going to experience a monetary collapse unless we fix this.
Thank you, Governor.
The country is in really deep trouble. We should not bomb Iran. We should end the war in Afghanistan tomorrow. Bring the troops home tomorrow. Marriage equality is a constitutionally guaranteed right on par with civil rights of the 60s. Let's end the drug wars. Legalize marijuana now. Legalize marijuana now. Let's repeal the Patriot Act. I would have never signed the National Defense Authorization Act allowing for you and I, as U.S. citizens, to be arrested and detained without being charged. That's the reason we fought wars in this country. I promise to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. That is a $1.4 trillion reduction in federal spending. If we don't do this now, we are going to find ourselves in a monetary collapse, and a monetary collapse, very simply, is when the dollars we have in our pocket don't buy a thing because of the accompanying inflation that goes along with borrowing and printing money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar we spend. I'm the only candidate that wants to eliminate income tax, eliminate corporate tax, abolish the IRS, and replace all of that with one federal consumption tax, the fair tax. I think it reboots the American economy. It's the answer to our exports. It's the answer to American jobs.
Okay. 2 minutes. All right.
90% of the drug problem is prohibition-related, not use-related, and that is not to discount the problems with use and abuse, but that should be the focus. So let's legalize marijuana now. And right now in this country, we are at a tipping point on this issue. 50% of Americans now support legalizing marijuana. Why is this the case? It's because we're talking about it. It's because debates and discussions are raging at dinner tables that haven't been raging at dinner tables in the past. So let's regulate it. Let's tax it. It's on the ballot in Colorado in November. Coloradans have the opportunity here really to change drug policy worldwide. Coloradans get it. Citizens of Denver 6 years ago voted to decriminalize marijuana on a campaign based on marijuana being safer than alcohol. I am not a hypocrite on this issue. I have drank alcohol, I've smoked marijuana. I don't drink alcohol, I don't smoke marijuana, but I can tell you categorically, in no category is marijuana more dangerous than alcohol. And yet, And yet we are arresting 1.8 million people a year in this country on drug-related crime. We have the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world, 2.3 million people. Half of what we spend on law enforcement, the courts, and the prisons is drug-related, and to what end? Look, this is not about advocating drug use. 50% of kids graduating from high school have smoked marijuana. That's an issue that belongs with families, not in the criminal justice system.
So as a medical doctor, previously in clinical practice for about 25 years, I can say with a real understanding of the science and the health impacts that marijuana is a substance that is dangerous because it's illegal. It's not illegal on account of being dangerous, because it's not dangerous at all. It is well understood that the health impacts of marijuana are mainly the public health and safety impacts from the illegal drug trade associated with marijuana prohibition. So the most important thing we can do to get rid of the health problems associated with marijuana is to legalize it. And on day one, a president, if she wanted to, could instruct the DEA to do a really radical thing. And that would be to use science in determining what substances will and will not be scheduled. Because the minute science is used, marijuana is off the schedule. And the same goes for hemp, which is also a substance for which there are no bad drug effects. There are no bad health and safety effects. Yet there are very important economic benefits. Both of those substances should be legalized. Marijuana should be regulated, but in a way that does not create another tobacco monopoly, but permits small businesses to actually flourish.
Now,
let me start with a premise here. We need to provide ourselves with a strong national defense. It's one of government's fundamental responsibilities. But the operative word here is defense, not offense, and not nation building. The biggest threat to our national security is the fact that we're bankrupt, that we're borrowing and we're printing money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar that we spend. So I am promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013 that would include a 43% reduction in military spending. How does that go down? Well, a 43% reduction in military spending takes us back to 2003 spending levels. It's getting ourselves out of all the military engagements that we are currently involved in. Stop with the military interventions. It's reducing the military footprint worldwide, its bases, its troops that we have stationed in Japan, in South Korea, and in Europe. We have to stop our military interventions. We have to stop with the drone strikes. We have to stop with a policy that has us with hundreds of millions of enemies to this country that, but for these policies, would otherwise not exist. It's a recognition that when we talk about foreign aid to other countries, it's propping up foreign dictators that are on our side as opposed to the other side. We pick winners and losers. And there are a whole lot of unintended consequences that go along with this. Right now, we're funding the Syrian insurgents, and they're made up of jihadists.
5 seconds.
Did we not learn anything in Afghanistan where we funded Osama bin Laden?
all right.
I was opposed to going into Iraq before we went into Iraq. I did not think there were weapons of mass destruction, and I said in 2003, if there are weapons of mass destruction, we have the military surveillance capability to see that happen, and if that happens, we have all sorts of options. But if we go into Iraq, we're going to find ourselves in a civil war to which there would be no end. Afghanistan, I thought initially that that was totally warranted. We were attacked, we attacked back, but I would argue that after having been in Afghanistan for 6 months, we wiped out al-Qaeda. That was 11 years ago. We should have gotten out of Afghanistan 11 years ago. So here we are now on Iran. The largest demonstration in the world in support of the United States after 9/11 was in Iran by over 1 million citizens that showed up in support of the United States. And we're going to bomb Iran. We're going to bomb the citizens of Iran. We're going to find ourselves with another 100 million enemies to this country that we wouldn't otherwise have. So what's the federal role, though, when it comes to education? And what's the primary reason in this country why college tuition is so high? Well, it's because of guaranteed government student loans. Free comes with a cost. Free very simply, is spending more money than what you take in. Free is simply accumulating more to the $16 trillion in debt that we currently have. Free is gotten us to the point where we are going to experience a monetary collapse in this country due to the fact that we continue to borrow and print more money than we take in. We're printing and borrowing money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar we spend. Free, the Federal Reserve System in this country. The Treasury prints money. They give it to the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve gives the money to the banks at 0%. Do they give it to you or I? No, they buy up treasuries in a closed loop, making profits off of you and I with no risk whatsoever. This is what has to stop in this country, is the notion of free. There needs to be a level playing field for everybody. I would have vetoed the National Defense Authorization Act, allowing for you and I, as U.S. citizens, to be arrested and detained without being charged. Term limits. I would not be standing here before you right now if I didn't think I could do a really good job as President of the United States. And I am basing that on the resume that I have. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I started a one-man handyman business when I was a junior in college and actually grew that business to employ over 1,000 people in Albuquerque. It's amazing what can happen when you do what you'll say you'll do and when you show up on time. It's just amazing. Now, I sold that business in 1999. Nobody lost their job. Business is doing better than ever. As governor of New Mexico, I ran completely outside of the political system. I got elected governor, Republican governor, in a state that was 2-to-1 Democrat, and made a name for myself vetoing legislation. I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined. I vetoed 750 bills. I had thousands of line item vetoes. It made a difference when it came to billions of dollars worth of spending. It made a difference when it came to laws that would have told you or I what we could or couldn't do in the bedroom. With regard to immigration, which I think really is a hot-button issue, and it kind of highlights differences between me and everybody else, let's start off with the premise that immigration is really a good thing. Let's make it as easy as possible for somebody that wants to come into this country and work to get a work visa. Not a green card, not citizenship, but a work visa so that applicable taxes would get paid and that we would have no criminals working in this country. Look, we hear about wasted vote right now. Wasting your vote is voting for somebody that you don't believe in. That's wasting your vote. I'm asking everybody here, I'm asking everybody watching this nationwide to waste your vote on me. Vote for me, Gary Johnson, and you know what happens? I'm the next president of the United States, and I guarantee you nobody will regret that. You'll find somebody with no quit. You'll find somebody that will wake up every single day and take on the debates and the discussions that need to be happening in this country and aren't happening today because of a lack of leadership.
Thank you, Governor.